starting as District 3 City Council Representative, and then as Vice Mayor in 2016, and now our City Mayor since 2001. Some of her successes include lowering the city's debt and the millage rate for the last 5 years. She is a strong supporter of our police department, and we are all proud to be Florida's safest large city. Mayor Martin is passionate about helping Port St. Lucie reach its full potential, and as a member of the St. Lucie Transportation Organization, she works with other city leaders to ensure future road connectivity and public transportation services will be adequate to serve our growing population. Mayor Martin has lived in Port St. Lucie since 2006 with her husband and 2 children. Everyone, please give a warm Cascades welcome to our Mayor Shannon Martin.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. Anytime I have an opportunity to come out and talk to our residents, and thank you all for coming. I really appreciate this. Like I said, I love coming in and talking about the city, answering any questions that all of you have, talking a little bit about, what's going on, what our plans are. So I don't know how much time I have, but I can literally talk for hours. So I won't, but I could. So I wanted to make sure that I first and foremost address some of your concerns. I can tell you a ton of stuff, but I know that you're interested in certain things more so than others, and so I like to address those things right off the bat because that's what you want to hear about. So a couple of questions that were posed to me. I want to make sure I answer all of them as best as possible. First, let me start with solid waste, okay? Because that is our biggest issue that we're having right now in Port St. Lucie. And so as you know, we've had lots of issues with Waste Pro, really starting around the time of the pandemic, and things have gotten worse. There's a lot of questions about what the city has done or why hasn't the city worked with Waste Pro. Well, I can honestly tell you that we have been working with Waste Pro and pushing Waste Pro and trying to get them to improve their service the entire time. And we all know in the height of COVID, that was a great reason, which then transformed and translated to excuses. And they knew all along that the city was growing. Our staff, myself, the city manager, shared with them. Our staff meets with them on a weekly basis. They knew what was coming. 2019 was when the latest contract was negotiated and approved, and they knew all along. And what we said to them a couple years ago, even pre-COVID, was the city's growing. Of course, we couldn't anticipate the rate of growth, even though it was fast growing a couple years ago, and now it's even faster. And so we said, what are your plans? Are you making plans for the growth? They told us yes before COVID. They told us yes during COVID. They told us yes when COVID died down. We asked them to go to automated side loads because it relies less on labor. They said they were going to do that. We asked them everything under the sun and asked them to plan for the future so they can continue servicing the city and abiding by the contract, and they have failed at every turn. The people on the ground running our local operations out of Fort Pierce would make promises. The COO came before council at a public meeting and made promises on an improvement plan, and that never came to fruition. Under the contract, we have been assessing them administrative charges. Really, that is the only teeth that we have had in order to penalize them, so to speak, for non-performance. Most solid waste contracts are like that between the municipalities and whatever solid waste hauler that they have. And so we were fining them or assessing those administrative charges. Once the administrative charges back in September, October got to be $1.2 million, that's when the local management decided to tell the corporate management that it was that high. So of course, they came kicking and screaming, demanding their money back. And we said, no, we're not giving you your money back because you weren't performing. And so we all know what happened with yard waste, right? September it got a little bit better because they promised that they were gonna hire contractors, and they did for a time. But then they started saying, we're gonna walk. And we said, okay, well, we need to have a conversation about that. Then they decided that they're gonna claim force majeure under the contract and blame the pandemic as a way to get more money out of the city. Well, they knew what they were doing in 2019. They knew the amount that they were gonna charge. They signed the deal saying this is the annual amount. Deal's a deal, you gotta stick to that. So, they said, we're gonna claim force majeure, we're gonna sue you. Okay, well, no, you're not gonna do that. We said, well, we're gonna sue you and say, and prove that the contract specifically said, in writing, clear as day, you cannot use force majeure as a reason. The pandemic is not a reason to claim that. So they continued to threaten that. Then they decided to not provide the contractors anymore. And so the city had to go and provide the contractors for yard waste. Because it's very, very difficult, almost impossible, without a contract to get a solid waste hauler in to help us out and do the job. So we hired an outside company. As you know, January came and they weren't picking up yard waste yet again. We hired an outside company because the contract says that if they're not performing, we can hire the yard waste company. They didn't like that because, honestly, in this environment with the inflation, the cost is much, much higher. And so they said, well, you can stop using them, we'll bring the trucks back in and we'll do it. They could have done it all along. They had these abilities under the contract all along to do the right thing and partner correctly and provide the service to all of you that they were supposed to provide. And they kept wanting to play games and kept trying to use blackmail type situations to get us to acquiesce and pay them more money. And nobody on council was going to do that. Our city administration wasn't going to do that. They needed to stick to the contract. So they threatened us again in January and said, we're going to walk. And we said, okay, well, we're still in litigation. They wouldn't mediate. The judge had to order them to mediate with us. Most recently, the judge had to force them to, under the contract, has a clause that says at the end of the contract, there's supposed to be wind down meetings to get us to the end and make sure everything stays on track. They were refusing to meet with our staff to do that. The judge had to order them to have the wind down meeting and continue the mediation. So we are still in that phase now, and unfortunately, over the last several weeks, they have decided to, for whatever reasons, and part of it is because they don't pay their drivers, to be honest with you. They pay their drivers a daily rate, and they pay them $170 a day. So if you work 10 hours, that's $17 an hour. But if you make them work more than that, 14, 15 hours a day, you're making a lot less money. And they're quitting, and they're leaving. Why? Because they can go work for FedEx, they can go work for Amazon, sit in an air-conditioned truck or vehicle, deliver packages, and not have to deal with all of the nastiness of hauling garbage, especially in the heat. So we are still trying everything we can to force them to get back on track. Honestly, I don't see that it's going to happen. The drivers are continuing to quit and go other places. And so it's very unfortunate and it's horrible, but I don't see them getting better. And that's just being very frank and honest with you. We are working on some other potential options and about possibly renting some trucks in order to, if it goes beyond the 2 or 3 days, which under the contract says it becomes habitual, which it is a habitual situation, we can go out and try to find other services. However, it's very difficult without having a contract in place. Our staff is looking at renting some trucks. However, in their looking into the matter, there's only about 12 rear load trucks in the entire state that are available for rent. So, and we'd have to pull some staff, if that's even possible to rent them. We'd have to pull staff from Public Works. We can do that, we would do that, it would take them off their normal duties, but if we had to do it, the city manager has a mechanism, he can do that, because the garbage has to get collected. So, that's really the process that we're in now. As far as what's going on with the existing contracts, our staff negotiated all last week with the haulers that are in the process of being negotiated with, the 4 that the city council approved for the city manager and his staff to negotiate with. They have till, I believe, tomorrow to come up with their best and final proposals, which then our staff will work on figuring out what their recommendations are. I expect either there may be a special city council meeting next week in the evening. If not, it'll definitely come before us on May 23rd at our regular council meeting there. At that time, the city manager will recommend the haulers, and we'll find out what the cost is going to be for the annual cost going forward. Is it going to increase? Yes. And we knew that because of the inflationary situation that we're in now. And that is also one of the reasons why our solid waste task force looked at going to once a week garbage pickup. There are many other cities in the state, Stewart's one of them, Orlando, Jacksonville, I can name many others, who have gone to the once a week pickup with a 96-gallon container. Those containers will be provided to all of your individual homes late July or early August. If you do not want a 96-gallon container and it is too big for you, you can request a 64-gallon container. There's a mailer that will be going out on the 12th to every single resident in the city that describes how you can request a 64-gallon container. There'll be a phone number, a 1PSL phone number you can call, or you can also fill out a form online if you choose to do it that way. That will go right to neighborhood services, and then you will get a smaller container when the rollout happens later this summer. So that's the process we're in now, and then we're looking to get 2 haulers. We want to try our best to have the city split in half because it's so large, into an east side and a west side, and hopefully that will happen. We'll have to see what comes out of the negotiations and the recommendations. That's what the council's preferred, so hopefully that can happen. So that's what we're looking at. Are there any questions on solid waste that I can answer that I haven't talked about? Yes, ma'am.
Will we still be doing recycle separately, or will it be one collection?
You will be doing recycling, so it's going to be once a week garbage pickup in the container of your choice. Automated side load, just like recycling. You're still going to get your recycling picked up once a week. You're still going to get your yard waste picked up once a week by the new hauler. What's going to change is the bulk waste, which we're going from, you can't put everything in the world out with the curb anymore. It's going to be up to 5 pieces, and it's going to be on a designated day of the month for you to put the items out the night before, and then those things will get picked up on your designated day.
Mayor,
Yes.
my big concern, let me turn this on. My big concern right now is yard waste.
Yes.
All right? Now, these contracts are not going to be until September, am I correct?
They're not going to be till September.
All right. Now, what do? We got hurricane season coming in. Yard waste, you go trim your yard or branches, we're having a hard time getting rid of this stuff. And pickup has not been really steady. You guys just came through here with a chipper and everything, but we have no idea when you're coming. Didn't even, do this. So how can you help us on this?
So absolutely. So at last night's meeting, we gave the city manager the authorization yet again to bring Optimum Services back. They were the ones that were picking up the yard waste that we contracted out earlier this year. We gave them the authority to bring them back. Waste Pro says that they were starting this week to collect yard waste again. Staff is trying to verify that. did see a couple trucks out there, but I can't be certain because they don't tell the truth. So our staff is trying to verify that, but Mr. Blackburn does have the authority as of last night to get the yard waste collected. So just want to bring up quickly, I don't want to get to everyone's questions, but there's a difference between hurricanes and then regular collection. So the regular collection is supposed to happen per the contract. Once there's a hurricane, the FEMA haulers then come in after the hurricane to deal with the debris. Just want to make sure everyone is aware of that. So there's two different sides to it. And then what's going to happen is, because once if a hurricane does happen and there's debris, then we have to get those haulers in, and then there's always a battle with that, like we had the last time we were supposed to have a storm, is because all of the haulers then go to the place where the direct hits happen first. Why? Because that's where they make the most money. And then they will go back to the areas that aren't hit so bad. But we also have our emergency management department. We have a full public works crew that gets activated in the event of a hurricane. I mean, our entire city organization goes into overdrive and through all of our emergency management protocols when something like that happens. Someone's over here first. Yes, ma'am.
Can you discuss maybe when the contract with Waste Pro ends, and
Yes.
if there are other companies that will come in to bid?
So the request for proposals already came in. We went right away to do that. The end date that they finally agreed upon was September 15th. Waste Pro's done as of September 15th. The new hauler starts as of September 15th. That date may change a little bit, but that's the date that we're looking for right now. Usually, and I also want to share, a task like this to get a new hauler on board typically takes 12 to 18 months. That's how long it takes. But because of the position that Waste Pro put us in, we've had to act so fast. I mean, our staff, I gotta give them a lot of credit. They were working 18-hour days on the weekends to try to get this RFP out on the street. Then typically RFPs are out for 30 to 60 days. Those are requests for proposals for those who aren't aware. Sorry if I talk in acronyms, I'm just so used to them. We put that only out for 2 weeks. And why did we have to go so fast? Because in order to get a new hauler in September, the new companies have to order the equipment, and they need that lead time. So also want to mention that there's a question on, okay, well, why did the city have to go out and get the garbage carts? For the same exact reason. There's a lead time to order 80,000 carts. That's how many we need in the city, because we're a big city. So these companies needed a lead time to manufacture and be able to distribute the carts to every single home in the city. So that's why the city had to go ahead and make the purchase and put the order in ahead of normally what would happen is the new hauler with the 12 to 18 month time frame, they would handle all that for us. But we couldn't do that because of the situation. Yes, sir.
Are the problems with Waste Pro unique to just them, or do you have assurances that the performance of other companies is what you expect to happen?
So other waste haulers across the state, just like every other business, has had labor shortage issues. However, there is no company that has had the problems that Waste Pro has had. Santa Rosa County is suing Waste Pro. Palm Coast is suing Waste Pro. There are other cities, Cape Coral. I went to the Florida League Cities Conference in February, and I was speaking with the mayor of Cape Coral, who is a city that's very similar to Port St. Lucie. They have been having problems with Waste Pro for a long time, and their legal team was actually in contact with our legal team about how we were addressing the lawsuit. It goes beyond the state of Florida. Memphis, Tennessee is in a huge lawsuit with Waste Pro, and also there are 3 parishes in Louisiana that had solid waste on the street for 2 whole weeks, which is insane and can never happen. So it's really Waste Pro's corporate management, and there was a transition in their corporate management in 2021. The founder, John Jennings, was in power, and he decided to retire and turn it over to his son. And John Jennings made us a lot of promises with the COO, Mr. Benaziac, and then he turned it over to his son. And ever since his son took it over, it's no longer about partnership, it's no longer about doing the right thing, it's about the dollar. And so what is Waste Pro doing? They're actively seeking out other contracts in other parts of the state because that's what they do. They're gonna go try to find, and it's sad because they're not gonna do anything down in those areas either. And the only thing that we have that is our real carrot to hold them here, and hopefully, and they will stay until September, is whenever these companies come on and perform services for the city, they have to post a performance bond. And there's a $4 million performance bond that we can yank and call the bond for if they decide to leave. We already put the surety company on notice that we are having problems and are starting to ask them to start going forward with their process. In the event we go for the full throttle of yanking it completely. But we have that little bit of a carrot to hold over their head. And what does that do? If a performance bond is pulled and the surety company pays it out, that puts the world on notice that they've been in default, which makes it more difficult for them to get contracts in other places. So that's the other little carrot that we have right now.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
The garbage pails that you say that we were getting, whether it's 64, these will be the same similar type that we use for, which is an automatic pickup. You will not need a person. The truck comes with it and.
You'll need one driver in the truck. Your new can is going to look exactly like your recycling can, only it'll be black and not green. Are there any other solid waste questions I can answer?
Another question.
Oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me how the current problems with Waste Pro and the potential of hiring new vendors will affect our individual taxes?
Well, I'm sorry. Affect our what?
All the problems with Waste Pro and choosing new vendors going forward
Yes.
affect our individual taxes.
Okay, so your City of Port St. Lucie ad valorem taxes is not going to affect anything. We've lowered the tax rate every year for the last 6 years, and we're planning on doing that again this year. It's not going to affect the crosstown portion of your taxes. What it's going to affect is your non-ad valorem, which is the assessment fee that we charge. Is that fee, currently you pay $282 a year for the service. Is it going to go up? Yes, it is. And again, that is because, one, we were the lowest in the state. When we benchmarked ourselves against all the other cities, there are cities that are paying a lot more. We want to keep that down as much as possible. We do not want to see a huge increase, but if I told you there wasn't going to be one, I'd be lying to you, and I'm not going to do that. So there will be an increase. I can't tell you how much yet, because that is still being negotiated. We're looking for best value as opposed to lowest price, because when you go at the lowest price, sometimes, you know the saying, you get what you pay for. So we want to make sure it's the best value, but we also want to make sure it's as reasonable as possible too. So that's what we're going for. Yes, ma'am.
So that black can that we're going to be getting, is that going to be recycled as well as our regular trash?
No, you're going to have your separate green recycling can. Same. That's not changing. You're going to get a black can or regular charcoal colored can that looks exactly the same as your recycling can for solid waste. That's okay. In the back, way in the back?
Yeah, this past weekend, we all put our garbage out on Saturday.
Yep.
We pick up today, Tuesday.
Yes.
I can only think that over the summer, and the fact that we're supposed to have less motivation to come and pick up our garbage.
Yes.
Is there some way that we could at least be given some kind of notice about when we should actually put it out? Because once it goes out there, it's out in the hot sun.
Yes. We are trying to get them to.
I would think that would become like a sanitary issue.
We are trying to get them to get more up to speed and to be able to provide that information to us. We are trying to, but we are not having success with that as of now. We know that they are running 2 to 3 days behind on solid waste and on recycling. Believe me, if I could control their operations, or our city staff could, we would, but we just don't have that ability. We are looking into the possibility of renting trucks, but again, those are very difficult. So our staff is trying to work on that and to try to possibly, if it's going past those couple days. In addition, and that's why I talked about the habitual clause, because then it gives us the authority under the contract to try to rent some trucks. And we also are in contact with the health department as well, and our legal team in the city attorney's office is also working with the health department in case we have a public health issue, and the health department controls that, so we're trying to work with them to see what constitutes that if we continue to have even more problems than we already have right now. So,
I was specifically asking about communication.
Yeah.
Is there a way that somebody could make it their job to call and find out exactly where they're gonna be, and or even if it's from
Our-
our association, that someplace that we can contact to find out whether or not we should put our trash out?
So, as of right now, I'm gonna tell you, we're trying, but again, we're trying to ask them for that information, but they're not giving us that. They're saying, we're coming, we're gonna get to it, they won't give us that. So what we're saying is, plan on it being 2 to 3 days, unfortunately, and if you don't wanna leave it out at night, and I don't know what the rules are here for that, I know every community is different. Bring it back at night, and then put it back out first thing in the morning. I wish I can give you an answer on saying, nope, it's gonna be picked up the next day or this day for each community. I just can't give you that because they're not being responsive to that. And we don't have another company that will come in and take over for that, for us. Yes, ma'am? I'm sorry. Hold on one second, go ahead.
Is the recycle and the home trash gonna be picked up on the same day?
I don't know that yet. You will have a day for each, but we won't know that until the contract's awarded. Yes, sir?
Now, years ago, we didn't have the city involved with trash collection.
Yep.
It was done by community. Is it getting too big for the city, and it'd be better to have multiple people working for different parts throughout the city?
So,
Without these major contracts that you're working with?
so many years ago, it was not on the tax roll, and what was happening was a lot of the companies weren't getting paid, and also the issue was that we had all these little garbage companies all over, and it was creating problems because there was too many. And so the council at the time, I think back in 2004 or 6, decided to change that and take control of it to better manage it. And then to put it on the tax roll and have everybody pay the same. So we'll continue on with that. We're not looking to change that at this time. We don't have the time to even start that process to look to change that at this time because of everything that's happened so very quickly.
Now, years ago, from upstate New York, the cities had their own crews and own trucks picking up garbage. Is that the way we ought to go, since these contractors are fulfilling their obligations?
So great question. We can't do that because of the short time frame. Because to have our city go to providing a whole solid waste division and all that equipment, when I spoke with the city manager, the capital investment for that is about $50 million. Each garbage truck costs $400,000 right now in today's economy. And so you need about 60 of those. So just in capital for just trucks, you're talking over $22 million. So we don't have that ability right now. As the city continues to grow, are we gonna have to look at that in the future? Yeah, we are. We're definitely gonna have to look at that. Not saying it's gonna happen, but we are gonna have to do a feasibility study and take a look at it, for sure. Yes, sir?
Can you clarify if we're going to be charged for the new containers? I hear that on a monthly basis, or some basis, we'll be charged for the new black gray container?
Yes, how it normally works is, They build that into the rate. And you don't know that you're doing it, really, but just like anything else, like your cable box. Cable box isn't free. You're paying that in your monthly cost and then translates into your yearly cost. Because the city had to act so quickly, what's gonna happen is, it's $6 a year per household, and that will be blended into the rate of the new solid waste assessment. $6 a year. Yeah. Yes, ma'am?
Compare the size of the 64 gallons to the one we already have. How many gallons are recycled?
Well, we have both. We have 60, most people have a 64-gallon recycling cart. Some of the bigger families have the 96-gallon carts. So it just depends on each household, but most have 64. Yes, ma'am?
So with the new contract, are we gonna be able to choose the recycling also, for the large and small, right now we don't have?
No, whatever recycling you have now, that's gonna stay. That's not gonna change. Recycling is not changing in any way, shape, or form. Yes, sir?
We're not supposed to leave yard waste out during hurricane season for safety reasons.
Right.
But we have no idea when they're coming to pick up. I just went through a 6-week interval where my yard waste was not picked up. How do we deal with this during hurricane season?
Well, once June 1st hits, we're gonna be asking the same thing to, don't put out a lot. We do it every year. We ask the residents to be mindful, don't cut down large trees, don't start, cutting back their whole yard. We ask the same thing every year. So we'll be asking the same thing again. But like I said, we gave the city manager the authorization to hire the company again to pick up the yard waste. So I'm sure that's gonna start very soon because I don't believe that Waste Pro's gonna do it. I just don't believe anything that they say, unfortunately. So, yeah.
Here's the other thing. Now, all the garbage with the automatic is gonna have to be in the can. What happens to the stuff that, say you had a party, you only had one can, now you got extra garbage. What happens with that?
So it's supposed to all fit in a can. The 96-gallon container can hold 13 garbage bags, I believe. So, and what we're going to have to do, from what I've been told, what we're going to have to do is talk to the provider to see if it's possible to schedule a second pickup. And then that second pickup, there may be a charge for that. I can't tell you exactly that yet, but the goal to go into the 96-gallon is because the 96-gallon is the equivalent of really what you would put out twice a week. So, and of course, because we're going to automated side load and it's less drivers.
Let me help you out with it. I use that PSL1
Yes.
for pickup of the yard waste.
Yes.
It does work. A little hard to use, but it did finally get some pickup because people were clearing off and the contractor was just dropping them on the street. Took me 2 weeks, but he finally did come and pick it up.
Yeah.
So that may help out.
So, and let me clarify. What I meant to say was 7 13-gallon garbage bags. So I'm sorry for misspeaking there. So, are we good with solid waste? So we can talk. All right. I just want to talk about some other stuff. So St. Lucie West. Yes, I know St. Lucie West is Boulevard is a nightmare at times to travel down this city. And you want to know about what's going on with the work on the overpass by FDOT. So it's a project that they're working on, started in January. It's 1.8 miles of widening. The project improvements include constructing a new 3-lane eastbound bridge over 95, separated 10 feet from the existing bridge, the widening of St. Lucie West Boulevard to accommodate 2 eastbound and westbound travel lanes, with a 3rd eastbound lane between 95 southbound and northbound ramps. 2 eastbound left turn lanes at the 95 northbound on-ramp, and 2 westbound right turn lanes at the 95 northbound on-ramp. Reconstructing and widening of those ramps will connect with the existing St. Lucie West Boulevard roadway to the new eastbound bridge from the east and west directions. There'll be a 7-foot buffered bike lane, a paved shoulder, and 5 to 6 foot wide sidewalks on both sides of the roadway, and constructing a 22 to 40 foot lane line, 2-lane line, curved median with curb and gutter. There'll be fencing retrofits on the north side of the existing bridge and a new railing on the eastbound bridge. They'll be installing new traffic signals with enhanced synchronization and timing at the I-95 ramps. It is a $15 million project, and the expected completion date is summer of 2023. So that's the project that's happening right now. As far as St. Lucie West Boulevard, so the city just went to something called mobility fees. We used to collect what's called impact fees. And so impact fees are the fees that developers pay for the impact on our new development on our community. And so impact fees you can only use for roadway widening. You can't, and meaning creating more lanes. You can't use them for other things like roundabouts. You can't use them for multimodal paths, other forms of the transportation network. So the city, like many other cities in Florida, have now changed to mobility fees, which gives us that flexibility. So we had to come up with the whole plan first and figure out the methodology by which to calculate what the developers would pay for the impacts on the community. That study was done, and we are now in phase 2 of that plan. And phase 2 was the staff coming to us with all different roadway projects that we're gonna have to attack and address in the future. St. Lucie West Boulevard is on that list. California is on that list. Torino is on that list. And there's several other roads as well down more in the southwestern part of the city, like some of the collector roads like Savona, like Rosser, changing from 4-way stops in some places to roundabouts. And whether you like roundabouts or not, the reality is that they move cars and they move people a lot better than stop signs and 4-way intersections. So we're looking to change that because one of the biggest concerns, as I'm sure you are aware, is traffic and really getting people to be able to move better throughout the city. So we preliminarily gave approval to staff to start working on the plans for all of those roads. And so what's going to come forward later on, probably by the next retreat, I don't know if it'll come forward, it's probably too soon for the July retreat, but the February retreat, they'll come forward with the plans, cost estimates of how to go about, and a priority list that we're gonna have to put in priority to see which roads we're gonna tackle first. As you can imagine, this project just for the on-ramps is $15 million. As you can imagine, the costs are gonna be high, but it's our responsibility to address it and take care of it. And so we will be making sure that we have a plan for all these projects. We always try to leverage all of our funding resources. We don't just look to the city dollars. We go for state funding, we go for state grants, some things that we can get federal funding for. For example, for St. Lucie Boulevard South is in process with DOT right now. Then we got the funding through our transportation planning organization, and we got the money from DOT. However, they need to finish the second, third, and fourth phase of it, but that's not slated for construction. Congressman Mass came to us and said, how can I help? And we said, well, we really need funding to finish this roadway sooner rather than later, so can you help us out with that? So he's put in a request to help us out there. So we try, like I said, everything we can to leverage every resource to get these projects going and to get them completed. Floresta, as you probably know, are familiar with, that's a 3-phase project. We did the first phase, it's almost done. We wanted to do 2 and 3 together. 2 and 3, a couple years ago, when it was estimated, was $26 million. Now, phase 2 alone is $26 million. So that's a half-cent sales tax project, still gonna get done, but now we have to split 2 and 3 up in order to have the funding in order to do that. Yes.
I don't know if it's different here in the state of Florida. But I assume that the builders, when they first came here to start talking about building, they needed an impact study done on
Yes.
traffic and road.
Yes.
We really only have crosstown across St. Lucie West. I think the 95 crossover roads are gonna be impacted tremendously. There's not another choice, we don't have another east-west.
No, and so that's why we're gonna have to address St. Lucie West Boulevard and look what we can do for widening, for this roadway, and that we are in the process of doing that right now. So, the way the city was built, you know, I think you all probably know, if we all been here a long time, we weren't built to be the city that we are. We were built to be a bedroom community for retirees only, and we have had to retrofit the city, and we'll continue to have to retrofit the city, because we were platted with 80,000 single-family lots. And when you plat a community with 80,000 single-family lots, that is an inherent right, and I'm just talking about the original city. I'm not even talking about the annexations that were done in Southern Road and in Tradition, and you see, if you're traveling over there, what's coming up now. So the original city was platted there, 80,000 single-family lots. Nobody on council, no one has the right to stop an individual property owner from building a single-family home on that lot. Can't do it, because the right was given when it was platted. So, there's a lot of talk about why can't you stop growth? Why are you killing the wildlife? Or why are you taking away the trees? Those lots are owned by private owners. They have the right to build those lots. Yes, the animals live in there. They're not wildlife habitats. They're not conservation land. They're not preserved land. They're overgrown lots with mostly invasive species. And so I can't stop that. The only way a city can stop this development is to have a specific public purpose for which to stop it. The city's done that twice. When they did Becker Road, when they needed Becker Road, they did a moratorium on building in order to get the road going, and they had to do a taking of property. And if you have been here long enough, you remember the water and sewer days. There was an area that the state came in the Torino area, because there was no water and sewer access, and the state put a moratorium on it because, on that building in that area, because there was no water and sewer lines at all. And so the city had to go and put them in, and then once those lines were in, then they lifted the moratorium. But we just can't say, okay, we don't like it, let's stop it. Unfortunately, that's private property rights are very big deal in Florida, and we can't prevent private property owners from developing their single-family lots. And then, same thing with the other developments. They have right to develop, they have to go through every single application, every single one has to go through our planning and zoning process. We can't tell, by law, we can't tell a developer, sorry, you can't put that through the process. It's against the law to do that. Whether they eventually get approved or not, by following our comp plan, by going through all of our concurrency reviews, they have to be allowed to go through that process. Of course, everyone has a right to challenge what they're going to do, but we have to at least give them the opportunity to be put through the process. And that's exactly what we do. Yes, ma'am?
How does something get rezoned? I mean, we can zone for commercial, next thing you know, there was 200 residential apartments.
So they go through our planning and zoning process. We have a comprehensive plan, and so land use has to match the zoning. First it starts with the comp plan. And so everything is reviewed for concurrency, which means they have to look at traffic, they have to look at public facilities, they have to look at trip counts. They go through the whole entire process, and then so the applicant has a right to rezone. It depends on whether that rezoning fits in a category to match the land use or not.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yes, so the land, and typically what happens is, so I'll give you an example just with Tradition. So in Tradition, the DRIs were approved, which is a development of regional impact, which means the entitlements were given at the time they were approved. And so then it falls under the comp plan, it meets all the criteria, it's allowed. Then you have to make sure the land use matches. So you have the land use, and then you have the zoning. So right now in Tradition, we have the land use in place for a new community district, which was approved through the entitlement, but it's ag land. So they have to change that and do a rezoning because ag land isn't in the category, and we know it's not gonna be ag land anymore. Why the developers wait to do that? Of course they're gonna wait to change the zoning because they're not gonna have to pay very much to have a cow in old orange groves. It's very minimal. When they change the zoning, then that changes what they get charged for the taxes on the property. So we have that tradition happening right now. And people say, well, why are you changing? Well, it has to be changed because we know that's not what was the entitlement that was given. Hold on, sir. I have one in the back. Yes, ma'am?
Hi, can you address the piece of property outside the inlet gate?
Yes.
That is now zoned commercial?
Yes.
Apparently 72 townhouses may be put in there?
Yes. So that's through the planning and zoning process. They came to the council about a year ago, wanted to put in 136 multi-family rental units. I am very against multi-family rental units, not just in that location, but all over the city. So there was a time when, you know, we were only single family, and we realized that because of the way our city was founded, but over time, and as you grow, you realize that you have to make sure that you have those different types of housing uses. However, I think that we have enough of the rental. I firmly believe that. And so when I met with those developers back over a year ago, I said, I'm not gonna approve that. I don't want to look back 10 years from now and know that Port St. Lucie has become the rental community capital of the world. To me, that's not a good city. And as a matter of fact, we had a 300-unit multi-family rental application come before us last night, and I said, sorry, go back and come back with something else, because I'm not doing that, I'm not approving it. And luckily, I had 2 other members of council that supported that, so they should have been smarter before they came before us. Usually most developers will come in and at least ask the question, you know, but they didn't do that, which was a big mistake on their part. So we asked them to go back and come up with a different product, because rental is not favorable to us, or especially to me. And so they came back and scaled it down to a 72-unit townhome community. That's going through the process, has to follow the same process. And so all the concurrency will be looked at for that. And it's gonna have to come through the process, and we'll see how that shakes out. I can only speak for me. I told them that they'd have to come back with a different use. That still has to come through to me, and we'll see how the council feels about that type of use. Yes, sir.
72 townhouses with small cul-de-sacs and so on. How do they propose to accommodate a garbage truck that's going to come in there and pick up a 96 gallons a day?
They have to. They have to. They have to accommodate for, when a new development goes in, they have to accommodate for fire trucks. They have to accommodate for police cars. They know that they have to accommodate for that. So they have to make sure that their turns are wide enough to do that. That's really, they go, and so before it comes to council, before their site plan comes to council, which is really where we have a little bit more power to make some tweaks and changes, like saying, hey, you know, we really want you to put a wall here, or hey, we want you to put a fence here, or hey, we want you to put in a couple extra turn lanes here. That's when we have the real, can get into the weeds of you know, making some changes. And so, but before it comes to us for the approval, the recommendation has to go through the site plan review committee. The site plan review committee is made up of planning and zoning board member, city staff, a fire district representative, a school district representative. So all that has to be accommodated for. School buses going in to the community, that all is reviewed and looked at. Yes, sir?
The zoning down here is kind of nondescript. I mean, you can almost build anything you want, anytime you want, any place you want. And then you just apply for different things. So for example, the case in point that's right here is,
they may not, and I'm just gonna be honest, they may not belong here in your opinion, but we have a comp plan, we have the land use, and we have the zoning. The zoning, whatever rezoning, has to match what the land use is. And so, they have to follow the criteria of our code. Our planning and zoning staff has to follow the criteria to recommend approvals, and our planning and zoning advisory board has to. The drug rehab, that's a whole nother animal. That's federal law and fair housing, and Anti-Discrimination Act. We had no choice but to approve that back then because other cities were not approving it down south in the Del Rey, Boca, Boynton, and we were basically told by outside counsel, they're getting sued, they're losing millions of dollars. Do you want to lose millions of dollars for your taxpayers? Because you're violating federal law by not allowing it. Because, and what happened is, we warned everyone who came to the public meeting. Be careful what you say, because what you think is not discriminatory, it is, under the law. We warned people. And what did they do? They came up and said they don't want this, because that, because it's gonna cause crime, because these people are worth less than other people. They had a court reporter in that meeting, and they were all ready to sue us and use all of that against us. And so, I hate to say it, but our own residents hurt us with that, because all the language that was coming out was pretty discriminatory. So, we have to be really careful about that stuff.
On the traffic signals that you have, is it locally controlled at each intersection, or do you have a system where you have a central control and it's synchronized through that?
Our traffic control division through Public Works has the synchronization. It's a computer system. It's not perfect. They have to make tweaks to it on the regular. Yeah.
The reason why I'm asking you that is I have experience with this, so I just want to know, do you have a timing of this?
Yes, we have an engineer that works on all that stuff.
I don't know if he's really up to snuff. Signals, since I've lived here and I've lived here for 10 years, and that's the nicest word that I can use. I worked down in Broward County for many years, and those lights are synchronized, and the traffic moves. Here, you can't go maybe 2 lights before you hit another red light. And I don't know if it's because of the timing engineer that you have, or if it's because of the methodology he uses, but something needs to be revamped.
So what I can do is put you in contact with our Public Works Director and have him talk to you about this, because I am no traffic engineer and I don't even want to pretend to play one on TV. But we do have a synchronization system and it is computer run.
It does work very well.
I'll have you talk to them about that. Maybe you have some insights you can help them with. That's possible, but I can definitely put you in contact with them. Yes.
I've heard rumors that the Turnpike was looking for another exit in Port St. Lucie,
Yeah.
either on Midway or St. Lucie West Boulevard. I don't think we need it on St. Lucie West Boulevard.
Well, so the Turnpike Authority controls that. As you know, we have our off-site for the solid waste and that we're using right now. And so they are planning, and so we were hoping, we had conversations years ago about putting an adventure park in that location. We've since kind of gotten away from that for various reasons, because we do realize that that's really the only city-owned parcel that we have left that's centrally located in the event that we do have to go forward with, we do go forward, or future councils go forward with our own solid waste authority here, our own solid waste division. Our Public Works uses that for all their trucks. They keep billings there. There's a lot of stuff. So we realized that that was not a smart site any longer because of the growth. And so we're going to put some of those amenities in different locations of parks that we are doing, that like the skate park type thing or a pump track. But the other part of that is that piece of property, we also knew that the Turnpike Authority is going to want a piece of that in the future for a northbound entrance. And they're doing a feasibility study or a PD&E study now, and it's in there. Is it gonna happen? Probably not in the next 10 years. And the 95 interstate is different from the turnpike. Because the way turnpike that you pay. And so in order to build more of those facilities, they have to make sure that when you're paying, the return on investment is there to put those facilities in. Unlike 95, the state pays for that. But the Turnpike Authority is responsible to the bondholders, so there is a method of whether that return on investment is worth putting in that interchange. And the last meeting we had for our transportation planning organization, the Turnpike Authority came before us and said they're nowhere even near that return on investment yet. So it's in their future idea of a plan, but I don't see it happening at least for a decade. So, yes, ma'am.
Let's get back to that little piece of land. We have 3 schools on there.
Yeah.
Us.
Yeah.
And how do they determine that this is okay for them to put something like that on that same road?
So, it's owned privately. They have the right to develop. It's not, I'm going to tell you, it's not going to stay vacant land forever. So again, they have to come through the planning and zoning process to see what the balance is and what can be put there. And to try to find, for me, it's really trying to find a balance. Because I can't tell them they have to keep that land vacant forever. I can't do that.
No, but it would be not as crowded.
Right, and so I told them a year ago, no, not 136 rental apartments. Now they're coming back with 72 fee simple owned townhomes. Is that more reasonable? It is more reasonable, and a less intense use is always residential versus commercial. So again, they have to go through the process, and we're going to have to see how it comes out.
In terms of the feasibility though, would the traffic for the schools and the bus stop, the buses and everything, how is that feasible to put something that big there?
Because it goes by the trip count of what the impact of the trip count is coming out of there. And so if you have 136 units versus 72, your trip count is automatically going to be lower. It's a whole analysis, traffic analysis that they do. Now, do we have a responsibility? We're going to have to make improvements to the road at some point. Yeah, and that's what I talked about with the mobility fees. We're going to have to address several of the roads in the city to deal with the issues that we're having in all different areas as it relates to more growth and more traffic.
But you don't allow them to build?
I can't prevent them from building. And
before you do your feasibility thing?
It will all be reviewed during the concurrency to make sure it lines up with the comprehensive plan, the land use, and the zoning, following our rules and our codes.
So I want us to be conscious of the time, so I want to make sure you've got all the points covered on other topics, because I'm thinking we have about 10 minutes left.
Let me see. I think
You hit the big ones.
that's what's on here, yeah. Yeah. The only other thing that's on here is lack of public transportation. So the city doesn't run our transportation system. Our transportation system is run by the county. What we do have in place, they just changed to the area regional transit system. They started a micro transit pilot program. They're actually working out of the Tradition area, where it's kind of like Uber and Lyft, but it's a free service, and they're trying to see how much that gets utilized. And then hopefully, if it is utilized well, then the county will expand that micro-transit into different areas in the city. But they're in that pilot program right now. I don't know what the outcome of that's going to be yet. Not even sure really when that's supposed to end, but I'll have to find that out from our county partners to see. Also, the Council on Aging does have a transportation bus that they utilize And so you can always, if you do need rides or that type of service, you can call the Council on Aging or go on their website and get information about transit and transportation there. Again, so the city's really progressive when it comes to these things, but we don't control the transportation system. At some point, I think the city's gonna be too big, or we're gonna have to control our own, because we just don't, and they don't do the best job at it. They have made some changes in the positive, but it needs to come a lot further than what it is right now.
So, any closing remarks for the community?
No, I can stay for a few minutes after. If you have any other questions about anything that I can answer, I can stay for a few minutes and be happy to answer any questions, and always happy to come back and talk about whatever it is that you guys are interested in.